Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we are going to go over one very specific thing that you can do that makes an avoidant likely choose you over anyone else. This is usually one of the most common things avoidants are looking for when they are committing to you. Now, if you do have this trait, that doesn't mean they're going to commit to you tomorrow. They still take a long time, but that's likely on their radar. And so I'm just going to jump really quickly into it so you at least know what I'm talking about. And then we'll talk about the different ways to do this in the relationship to further allow the avoidant individual to feel safer with you, as well as for you to feel more comfortable knowing the security of the relationship, okay? And so what is that one thing? Very simply, how you regulate your emotions, okay? And what does that look like and how does that play out in relationships? Because every single aspect is how avoidants kind of know how you regulate your emotions. They're not going to fall for it, just not fall for it, but they're not going to, that's how they think, by the way. They don't want to fall for a trick. And so that's why they make sure that you regulate your emotions in a lot of different ways. And so let's start with the first way that they're kind of checking. Is this how you regulate your emotions? How do you behave and what they're expecting it to look like versus what they're afraid it's going to look like, right? And it's not that they're putting you in these scenarios. It's just when these things occur in a relationship, they kind of check how you behave. And that's why avoidants take a little bit longer, more than a little bit, a lot longer to decide to commit because they're checking all the scenarios to which they can kind of view is this relationship worth it. Avoidants are just very scared to commit, but they're not just scared to commit as in they're scared to be loved or love. It's not necessarily that. It is more that they feel they really do enjoy their own solitude for their own maladaptive reasons. And so they don't want anything to interrupt that unless it's very much worth it, which is why they take longer, okay? And so the first one is how you act when they disappoint you, okay? So let's just say you guys planned that you would go to the mall this weekend and they canceled on you because, I don't know, they feel sick. And it's genuine. But that's still disappointing because maybe you expected this and maybe they rescheduled, so it's not like they're ghosting you or, making up a lie, nothing like that. They rescheduled. But you're still disappointed. Anybody would be disappointed, even if it's understandable. There's like a little bit of disappointment, okay? And so what are they looking for? We're talking about regulating emotion. So let's talk about what it looks like if it's not as regulated, okay? Raising their voice, you, right? Not you, but the non-avoidant person, right? Yelling, maybe trying to get back at them, maybe calling them names, begging them to change their mind, calling them numerous times to find a solution. So these are the things that they view as not regulated when they disappoint you. They will feel like this means that perhaps you're not willing to accept them for the way they are because avoidant individuals, they know they're going to disappoint you at some point. That doesn't mean they're going to stay that way. Their hope and goal, especially if they're, a decent person, they do want to change, but they know it's not going to happen overnight. And so by you behaving this way every single time they disappoint you, it's going to break up the relationship in their mind. And so they'd rather be with someone who can regulate their emotions during disappointment. So we talked about what it looks like when it's not as regulated. What does it look like when it's more regulated? Usually it's when you understand the source of your own disappointment, right? So let's say we're talking about the canceling, going to the mall this weekend. You recognize it's disappointing because I wanted to hang out with my partner. I was looking forward to this, right? You process what you're feeling before having a conversation. If this is something that really bothers you, you recognize if the conversation is worth it or not. Is it worth having a conversation of you just being disappointed? If it's a one-time thing, maybe not. If it's a common thing, obviously yes. And so you choose, let's say we're going on that path. It's a common thing. You choose to have a conversation in a less stressful time. So not during like intense work hours or when either of you have a lot on their plate, okay? And when you do this conversation, you get to the point of a conclusion for both parties, or at least you attempt to, while understanding you cannot control their responses, right? And so you just wanted to make it palatable for both individuals, and you're not saying it where you necessarily want them to change. You're just doing it to translate your feelings. That's it. And that's basically just the difference between regulated versus not so regulated. When a person is regulated, they're still accepting that they have their own responsibility in this communication as well. They can choose how they want to respond or not. A person not so regulated doesn't really see it like that, or it's hard for them to conceptualize that at that particular point, okay? And so then the next way an avoidant checks how you regulate yourself is when they ask you to change something for them, when they ask you to change something for them, okay? So being not as regulated, it might be that you might deny what they're asking. You might be defensive. You might feel uncomfortable. You might feel like what they're asking is not true. Let's say they say you're a little bit needy and you say, no, I'm not needy. You're just too distant. Or if you're more regulated, you might maintain composure. You might hear them out. You might admit, okay, I admit I'm feeling a little bit defensive, but I do hear what you're saying. And yes, I can do that, right? So you're able to translate your emotions clearly. You're not denying your feelings, but you're also more willing to adjust, okay? Similarly, they also check when you ask them to change. So actually when they literally change for you. And why this is something that shows dysregulation or versus regulation is this, okay? Somebody who's not as regulated, they might ask for that change at a high frequency, or they might continuously check if that change is real by maybe constantly asking for reassurance. They may ask other people the opinion, is my partner changing? They might, go talk to AI. Does this mean they're changing? Does this mean they're not? They might shut away from you not the avoidant, but the dysregulated person might shut away from the avoidant to test them and see if there's actually some form of change. And so it's almost like they don't trust the change. Whereas a person who's more regulated, they might maintain optimism while still being cautious. They still will vet and check and watch and listen if their partner is truly changing, if the avoidant is truly changing, instead of asking for continuous reassurance from their partner and friends. They still ask for reassurance every now and again, but they just don't do it to such a point that it becomes overbearing or stressful. And overbearing, I don't mean it in a way where it's negative. I'm just using that as a common word that avoidants use. And I am sorry if that can be a little hurtful, but a lot of you guys have probably heard that word because avoidants use that word a lot, okay? The next one is when they are slow to change, okay? So if you're not as regulated, you might behave more like you constantly bring up the issue, hoping they will understand and see it from your point. So you keep repeating that same issue, even though they're a little bit slower to change. Maybe they're not ready right away. You might continuously check if they're going to change. You might start thinking about the worst case scenario. If you're a fearful avoidant, you might actually start planning an exit strategy, which causes you to stress because you love them. And so you might become even more dysregulated because of that, okay? Whereas a person who's more regulated, when their partner is slower to change, they may recognize that change comes in, a certain way. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not linear. And nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Right? And so you're able to recognize, okay, I want my partner to change now. Like that's a feeling, right? But they can't. It's not going to happen. I can accept that. I can trust that it's possible my partner will, and I can handle myself if it doesn't. But right now, there's no proof one way or another. So right now I have to just wait. They are able to regulate themselves and recognize that. Avoidance really, really like this one, okay? And the very last one is during a disagreement. Are you not as regulated? Are you giving them the silent treatment? Are you jumping to conclusions? Are you not hearing their reassurance? I see this so much in couple sessions where I see the avoidant partners literally giving them reassurance, but the anxious or fearful or even insecure, but more anxious actually and fearful, they may not necessarily trust that reassurance, or they may not believe it's true. That one I don't see secure people do, but it's just something to mention, keep in mind. Believing the fight will end the relationship. Fearful avoidants do this a lot. Playing games to regain control of the situation due to anxiety. I see that with anxious people a lot. But in general, one or the other. Name calling and frequently bring up the issue again. And by the way, when I'm saying that this is a sign of dysregulation, it doesn't mean that you're like a bad person. Like you can adjust yourself a little bit. No one's perfect. You can do both. At the end of the day, the relationship, if two people are willing to make it work, it's going to be fine. You don't need to pick on yourself so much. Avoidants make mistakes too. Like no one is perfect, okay? So please don't feel like I'm criticizing anyone, okay? And the more regulated behavior during disagreements that avoidants are looking for, right, is apologizing for any of the issues you have caused. Don't take responsibility for the whole thing. Don't do that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying take responsibility for what you have done, okay? Hear them out. So you hear them out. You don't interrupt them when they're talking. You use a calm tone and understand you're responsible for your own reactions regarding the outcome. Those are some of the ways that an avoidant looks to see, are you the person I want to be with based on your emotional regulation skills, okay? I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.